In a world torn apart by conflict, moments of courage, sacrifice, and resilience emerged from the shadows. Today, we delve into the unique and iconic photographs of World War I images that tell stories of heroism and heartbreak, of hope amidst despair. Join us as we explore these powerful snapshots that not only captured history, but also shaped our understanding of humanity. Each frame is a window into the past, revealing the untold tales of those who lived through one of the darkest chapters in history. Stay with us as we uncover the stories behind these remarkable images and discover how they continue to resonate with us today. This is more than just histories, a journey through time that you won't want to miss. Let's begin. The wreck of a Spitfire shot down during landing operations. It happened in Salerno, in Italy. Supermarine Spitfire JK707 MK-VCT, built at Castle Bromwich Aircraft Factory. Piloted by Major Virgil C. Fields, who survived the crash, but was KIA in 1944, the Supermarine Spitfire is a British single-seat fighter aircraft that was used by the Royal Air Force and other Allied countries before, during, and after World War II. It was the only British fighter produced continuously throughout the war. The Spitfire remains popular among enthusiasts. Around 70 remain airworthy, and many more are static exhibits in aviation museums throughout the world. A Finnish soldier and his dog, Hämeenlinna, Finland, February 1941. A Finnish soldier practices maneuvers in the winter snow at a military dog training school during the Finnish-Soviet Continuation War. Hämeenlinna, Finland, February 1941. Focke-Wulf on the airfield. Finland, 1944. Focke-Wulf FW-190A8, Engelb 20, Yellow 20 of 3. Jägerschwader 54, JG 54, on the airfield at Imola in Finland, 2nd of July 1944. The Ju-87 Stukas flying overhead are possibly from 1. Schlachtgeschwader 3, SG-3. The unit was part of the detachment Kuolme, which participated in large battles of summer 1944 during the Finnish-Soviet Continuation War. When the Soviet Red Army launched its fourth strategic offensive on the 9th of June 1944, a Chinese soldier guards American Curtiss P-40 Warhawks. 1942, a Chinese soldier guards a line of American P-40 fighter planes, painted with the shark face emblem of the Flying Tigers, at a flying field somewhere in China. The American pursuit planes have a 12-to-1 victory ratio over the Japanese. APC Stummel and its crew, Eastern Front 1942, the SD KFZ 251, Sonderkraftfahrzeug 251, was a World War II German half-tracked armored personnel carrier. Designed by the Hanomag Company to transport the Panzergrenadier, German mechanized infantry, into battle, the SD KFZ 251 was based on its earlier unarmored SD KFZ 11 vehicle. SD KFZ 251S were the most widely produced German half-tracks of the war, with at least 15,252 vehicles and variants produced by 7 manufacturers. The utility of this vehicle led the German army to develop the similar-looking but shorter and lighter SD KFZ 250 as a supplement. The B-29 at the base, 1944. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress was an American 4-engine, propeller-driven heavy bomber, designed by Boeing and flown primarily by the United States during World War II and the Korean War. Named in allusion to its predecessor, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the Superfortress was designed for high-altitude strategic bombing, but also excelled in low-altitude night incendiary bombing and in dropping naval mines to blockade Japan. Soviet Air Force officers, Rufina Gasheva, 848 night combat missions, IWM Rus 5179, and Natalie Mecklin, 980 night combat missions. They was decorated as Heroes of the Soviet Union for their service with the famed Night Witches unit during World War II. They stand in front of their Polikarpov Po-2 biplanes. Night Witches is the English translation of Nachthexen, a World War II German nickname, Russian Nochnie Vedmi, Nochnie Vedmi, for the female military aviators of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, known later as the 46th Taman Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment, of the Soviet Air Forces. The regiment was formed by Colonel Marina Raskova and led by Major Yevdokia Bershanskaya, a Kriegsberichter, war correspondent, holding the Arriflex 35 to 1942 camera, 35mm ACR O292, and he is leaning against a knocked-out Soviet BT-5 light tank, C 1940-41. The BT-5 was the second tank in the Soviet BT series of tanks. The BT-5 improved on the previous BT-2, such as a new turret fitted with a 45mm anti-tank gun that was also used on the T-26 and the BT-5's younger brother, the BT-7. The BT-5 would enter service in 1933, with the Red Army first seeing action with the Second Spanish Republic in the Spanish Civil War in 1937 until the end of World War II, with between 1,884 and 2,108 units being produced, with production of the tank beginning in March 1,933, with production ending in 1935. Squadron leader with his Hurricane England, 1,942. Squadron leader J.A.F. McLaughlin, the one-armed commanding officer of No. 1 Squadron RAF, standing beside his all-black Hawker Hurricane Mark IIC night fighter JXQ at Tangmere, Sussex. McLaughlin was wounded in action in February 1941, and his arm was so severely damaged that it was amputated and replaced with an artificial limb. He continued to fly for several years, where he shot down 16 German and Italian aircraft over 250 missions. In July 1942, he crashed over France, and he died from his injuries at a military hospital. Pilots of the American 569th Bomber Squadron, England, 1,943. The 390th Bomb Group's 569th Bomb Squadron crew, which operated a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress during World War II. The squadron was activated in early 1943 and was deployed to Framlingham, England, to serve in the European Theater of Operations, ETO, in July of 1943. Assigned to the 8 Bomber Command, this strategic bombardment squadron consisted of, photographed from left to right in the back row, navigator David M. Roche, pilot Earl D. Greenstreet, co-pilot William H. Guyon, Jr., and bombardier Toglier George J. Arnold, as well as, from left to right in the front row, radio monitor Victor J. DeMays, ball turret gunner Cletus L. Wadlow Jr., waist gunner Thomas E. Eason, engineer, top turret gunner Kenneth E. Tricker, and tail gunner Thomas S. Leibner. British heavy 4-engine bomber Avro 683 Lancaster, March 1945. The Avro 683 Lancaster bomber was a 4-engine heavy bomber flown by the Royal Air Force and Allies during the Second World War, 1939-45. Lancasters were particularly used in nighttime bombing raids and could carry the heaviest bombs ever dropped in WWII. Lancasters dropped the bouncing bombs on several Ruhr dams in Operation Chastise, the Dam Busters raid of May 1943, the Battle of Remagen, Easter Saturday, the 10th of March, 1945. The Battle of Remagen was an 18-day battle during the Allied invasion of Germany in World War II. It lasted from the 7th to the 25th of March, 1945, when American forces unexpectedly captured the Ludendorff Bridge over the Rhine intact. They were able to hold it against German opposition and build additional temporary crossings. The presence of a bridgehead across the Rhine advanced the Western Allies' planned crossing of the Rhine into the German interior by 3 weeks. A paratrooper from the U.S. 17th Airborne Division gets a light from a Churchill tank crewman of 6th Guards Armored Brigade near Dorsten in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, 29th of March 1945. The 6th Guards Armored Brigade, later 6th Guards Tank Brigade, was involved in operations near Dorsten in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, in late March and early April 1945, while commanded by the 17th U.S. Airborne Division. They were supporting the American airmen and fought major battles in Dorsten, Dülmen, and Munster. Churchill tanks of the brigade, as seen in photos from Imperial War Museums, were transporting paratroopers of the 51rd Parachute Infantry Regiment. Destroyed T-35 Western Ukraine, July 1941. The T-35 was a Soviet multi-turreted heavy tank of the interwar period and early Second World War that saw limited service with the Red Army. Often called a land battleship, it was the only 5-turreted heavy tank in the world to reach production, but proved to be slow and mechanically unreliable. Most of the T-35 tanks still operational at the time of Operation Barbarossa were lost due to mechanical failure rather than enemy action. It was designed to complement the contemporary T-28 medium tank. However, very few were built. Paratroopers from the American 17th Airborne Division on the streets of Munster, March 1945. In March of 1945, during the critical Operation Varsity, paratroopers from the 17th Airborne Division embarked on a mission that would significantly impact the course of World War II. This remarkable photograph captures these brave soldiers on the streets of Munster. Pilot Leonard Haynes in his Spitfire, September 1940. Flying Officer Leonard Haynes of Number 19 Squadron sits on the forward fuselage of his Spitfire Mach Ia at Falmere, September 1940. Haynes shot down 6 enemy aircraft during the Battle of Britain. Richard Leoline Jones finished his RAF training in July 1940 and went to number 64 Squadron at Kinley. Dog Beach Patrol, U.S. Coast Guard Patrol at Paramore Beach, Virginia, October 1943. During WWII, the Coast Guard bloomed from under 20,000 to more than 250,000 at its height in June 1944. At that time, the service contained 9,874 commissioned officers, 3,291 warrant officers, and 164,560 enlisted personnel, augmented by another 125,000 temporary members of the Coast Guard Reserve who were conducting beach and harbor patrols back in the U.S., which in turn were augmented further by nearly 70,000 volunteers of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Tripoli, Libya, January 1943. The Battle of Tripoli was an engagement on between the Deutsche Italienische Panzerarmee commanded by Erwin Rommel of Nazi Germany and Ettore Bastico of Kingdom of Italy, who held the town, and the British Eighth Army, a Commonwealth force commanded by Sir Bernard Montgomery. After a short siege, the Italian and German forces withdrew from Tripoli, and the Allies entered the town to great worldwide fanfare. The crew of an Avro Lancaster at Dunholm Lodge, Lincolnshire, England, after returning from a raid on Stuttgart, the 2nd of March 1944. The bombing of Stuttgart in World War II was a series of 53 air raids that formed part of the strategic air offensive of the Allies against Germany. The first bombing, by 20 aircraft of the Royal Air Force, occurred on the 25th of August, 1940, and resulted in the destruction of 17 buildings. The city was repeatedly attacked over the next 4.5 years by both the RAF and the 8th Air Force, as it had significant industrial capacity, including the Daimler and Porsche automotive factories and several military bases, and was also a center of rail transportation in southwestern Germany. Stuttgart endured 18 large-scale attacks by the Royal Air Force, RAF, during the war, the first and last of which were on the 5th of March 1942 and the 13th of February 1945 respectively. One during which 21,016 long tons, 21,353 ton of bombs were dropped on the city. 2. But the RAF concluded that its attacks against Stuttgart were not as effective as they could have been. U.S. Marines, October 1944. The Philippines Campaign, Battle of the Philippines, Second Philippines Campaign, or the Liberation of the Philippines, codenamed Operation Musketeer 1, 2, and 3, was the American, Filipino, and Australian campaign to defeat and expel the Imperial Japanese forces occupying the Philippines during World War II. The Imperial Japanese Army overran all of the Philippines during the first half of 1942. Somewhere in England, May 25, 1940. Around 950,000 British women worked in munitions factories during the Second World War, making weapons like shells and bullets. Munitions work was often well paid but involved long hours, sometimes up to 7 days a week. Workers were also at serious risk from accidents with dangerous machinery or when working with highly explosive material. Medics of the U.S. 5th Infantry Division near Diekirch, Luxembourg, the 20th of January, 1945. Medics of the 5th Medical BN, 5th Infantry Division examining GI clothing found with German captured equipment after the liberation of Diekirch in Luxembourg on the 20th of January 1945. This was taken during a much-needed rest after the Sauer River crossing operations and drive up to Puchide. 3 soldiers of the 17th Airborne Division near Essen, Germany, the 10th of April, 1945. The 17th Airborne Division was activated on the 15th of April 1943 at Camp Mackle, North Carolina, with a cadre from the 101st Airborne Division. The 17th EH8's commanding officer, from the very inception, and the only one the division was ever to have, was Major General William Bud Miley, one of the Airborne's earliest pioneers. Veronica Foster, 1922-2000. That girl from the posters. Veronica Foster, popularly known as Ronnie the Bren Gun Girl, was a Canadian icon representing nearly 1 million Canadian women who worked in the manufacturing plants that produced munitions, weapons, and equipment during the Second World War. Foster worked for John Inglis Company, Limited, producing Bren light machine guns on a production line on Strachan Avenue in Toronto, Ontario, on the island of Iwo Jima. February-March 1945, 1945 major battle in which U.S. forces captured the island of Iwo Jima from Japan during World War II. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a major battle in which the United States Marine Corps and United States Navy landed on and eventually captured the island of Iwo Jima from the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. The American invasion, designated Operation Detachment, had the goal of capturing the island with its 2 airfields, Southfield and Centralfield. Royal Marines among the ruins in Osnabrück, Lower Saxony, Germany, the 4th of April, 1945. 2 commandos looking out for snipers among the ruins of Osnabrück, Germany, the 4th of April, 1945. Armed with a Bren gun and Thompson submachine gun, the commandos were probably members of No. 10 Inter-Allied Commando, which captured the town alongside 6th Airborne Division. No. 10 Inter-Allied was recruited from the volunteers of many nations who had fled to Britain to carry on the fight after their own countries had been occupied by the Germans. Soviet artillerymen and a 76mm divisional gun M1942, ZIS-3, during the crossing of the Oder River, Germany, March-April 1945. The 76mm divisional gun M1942 was a Soviet 76.2mm divisional field gun used during World War II. ZIS was a factory designation and stood for Zavod Imeni Stalina, the honorific title of Artillery Factory Number 92, which first constructed this gun. A smoke break somewhere on Peleliu, the 14th of September, 1944. Weary Marines take a brief cigarette break during the hard fighting on Peleliu, late September 1944. The Battle of Peleliu, codenamed Operation Stalemate II by the U.S. military, was fought between the United States and Japan during the Mariana and Palau Islands campaign of World War II from the 15th of September to the 27th of November 1944 on the island of Peleliu. U.S. Marines of the 1st of Marching Division and then soldiers of the U.S. Army's 81st Infantry Division fought to capture an airfield on the small coral island of Peleliu. The battle was part of a larger offensive campaign known as Operation Forager, which ran from June to November 1944 in the Pacific Theater. The crew of IS-2 number 537 of the 87th Guards Tank Regiment in Breslau, now Wrocław in Poland, the 27th of April, 1945, Soviet tank IS-2 to number 537 of Lieutenant B.I. Degtyarev from the 87th Separate Guards Heavy Tank Regiment, destroyed at Strigor Platz in the German city of Breslau, now Wrocław, Poland. The tank is known from the photograph by Anatoly Egorov musical moment. Soldiers of the 14th Panzer Division at the gates of the Hammelburg concentration camp, Germany, the 6th of April, 1945. Stalag the 13C was a German Army World War II prisoner of war camp, Stammlager, built on what had been the training camp at Hammelburg, Lower Franconia, Bavaria, Germany. The camp was liberated by Combat Command B of the U.S. 14th Armored Division on the 6th of April 1945. British prisoners of war celebrate their liberation from Stalag X-1B the 16th of April 1945. Stalag XIB and Stalag XID 357 were two German World War II prisoner of war camps, Stammlager, located just to the east of the town of Fallingbostel in Lower Saxony, in northwestern Germany. The camps housed Polish, French, Belgian, Soviet, Italian, British, Yugoslav, American, Canadian, New Zealander, and other Allied POWs. A Royal Army Veterinary Corps sergeant tends to a wounded Labrador retriever named Jasper at Bayeux in Normandy, the 5th of July 1944. The Royal Army Veterinary Corps, RAVC, is an administrative and operational branch of the British Army responsible for the provision, training, and care of animals. It is a small but technically competent corps forming part of the Army Medical Services. Unusually, although it is responsible for providing what might be termed materiel, it is under the control of the Adjutant General, who is in charge of personnel. During the fighting at the Mareth Line, Tunisia, the 22nd of March, -24, 1943. The Battle of the Mareth Line, or the Battle of Mareth, was an attack in the Second World War by the British Eighth Army, General Bernard Montgomery, in Tunisia, against the Mareth Line held by the Italo-German First Army, General Giovanni Messe. It was the first big operation by the Eighth Army since the Second Battle of El Alamein, 4+1, 2 months earlier. On the 19th of March 1943, Operation Pugilist, the first British attack, established a bridgehead, but a breakout attempt was defeated by Axis counterattacks. Pugilist established an alternative route of attack in Operation Supercharge 2. An outflanking maneuver via the Tabaga Gap was planned. Montgomery reinforced the flanking attack, which from 26 to the 31st of March forced the First Army to retreat to Wadi Akarit, another 40 miles, 64 kilometers, back in Tunisia. Wait for me, Daddy, British Columbia, the 1st of October, 1940. Yes, Dad is back. Wait for me, Daddy is a photo taken by Claude P. Detloff on the 1st of October, 1940, of the British Columbia Regiment, Duke of Connaught's own rifles, marching down 8th Street at the Columbia Street intersection, New Westminster, British Columbia. While Detloff was taking the photo, Warren Whitey Bernard broke away from his mother to his father, Private Jack Bernard. The picture received extensive exposure, with widespread circulation through magazines such as Life and Time, and was used in war bond drives. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth in London's East End on the 18th of October 1940, claiming that a single royal couple saved the centuries-old British monarchy might be going a bit far. But King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, by an accident of history and through personal qualities that earned the admiration and support of the British public, may have done just that during some of the most challenging times the country had ever seen. George VI had been crowned king just 3 years before the outbreak of World War II, and his and Elizabeth's nerves, perseverance, and courage would be severely tested during the conflict, especially when Britain itself became a battlefield. Nowhere is this more obvious than during the Blitz, when the monarchs broke with protocol and mingled directly with the people. Their actions during those days set the pattern for their leadership during the most critical year of the war. Los Angeles, May 7, 1945. Victory Day. 70 years ago today, the front page of the Los Angeles Times screamed, "Full victory in Europe." The war in Europe was over. The toll had been staggering, and World War II would last 3 more months. When the war ended in Europe, more than 100,000 American troops had been killed. Supply shortages and rationing continued. Now the Allies could turn their full focus toward Japan and the war in the Pacific. The front page of the Los Angeles Times on V-Day 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally, read the lead story on May 8, 1945, completing the victory in the European phase of the Second World War, the most devastating in history. British sailors celebrate VE Day with their girlfriends in the fountains of Trafalgar Square, London, England. Tuesday, May 8, 1945. It's an iconic photograph, one that has been used across the world to highlight the celebrations on VE Day, the end of the Second World War in Europe. But there's always been one big question surrounding this particular image. What was the story behind those two women smiling for the camera in the Trafalgar Square fountains on 8 May 1945? Determined to find out more about the women, IWM put an appeal out on Twitter for help. 24 hours later, we were contacted by a relative. Their names were Cynthia Covello and Joyce Digney, and the two women were lifelong friends. Both photographers and film cameramen present in Trafalgar Square that day captured Joyce and Cynthia in the fountain, as still images and film footage of their exploits have since been used in articles and documentaries around the world. Joyce remembers seeing a film of their fountain escapades in a cinema newsreel shortly after the war, but it wasn't until much later that the two families discovered just how famous that film footage and photograph had become, regularly spotting Cynthia and Joyce's familiar faces in television programs, books, and newspaper stories. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.